Good morning. It is February 10th. Um, let's see, Friday, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Actually, technically, it's 10:04. Little bit late today, but that's okay. Actually, it's not. I really should be coming on right when things are going on, but got a phone call from my sister, and that kind of happened. So, um, I have Jason Brick, who just joined me. And Jason is a fellow martial artist. He's an author. Rob, good morning. You being late worked well for me getting off a work call. Sweet. All right. So I'm going to bring Jason on and add him to that. Morning, sir.
Morning. How we doing?
Doing pretty good. Yeah. So I go upstairs. I send you the link. I start a new thing of tea. My sister calls, and then I'm like trying to set up, and then I sent you the link, and so I actually didn't see you saying, "Hey, email it to me," until after I'm like off the phone, and then my phone rang again, and yeah, so it is.
Well, hilariously, in the time after I sent you that thing about, well, my laptop's not behaving this morning, and Facebook's not working on my phone, so I need you to email it to me so I can use it on my phone. I figured out why my camera wasn't working on my laptop, and so I was able to.
Well, that's good.
There's a button that I accidentally pressed that turns off the camera.
Ooh, fantastic. Hey, Bill, how you doing? So, Bill, Bill is one of my, I wouldn't say one of my oldest friends because I am older than he is, but he and I worked at the same security company, and he's the one who really, even though I had been a bouncer here and there before, he was the really one that kind of got me into bouncing.
Okay.
So yeah. So Jason, tell the crew a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I'm not anybody important. Everybody here is more interesting than me. In terms of my martial arts background, I started doing martial arts when I was 11 years old. It was wrestling.
Okay.
My dad was a very successful wrestler, wanted all of his sons to wrestle. I didn't want to. I cried, but then I actually was forced to wrestle and found out I really liked it. And then I wasn't good enough to go wrestle at college level because those people are insane. To give you an example of how insanely competitive and just honestly psychotic college wrestling is, my younger brother went to college on a wrestling scholarship, quit mid-season his sophomore year to join the Army, and got out of shape in boot. His mile time and his body fat went up during boot camp. So anyway, I wasn't good enough to do that, but I did miss it. And so I ended up doing a few of those elective classes, and then got into a school that had taught Kempo and also had a very competitive kickboxing program.
Okay.
I did that for many years, ranked up, started a studio, took a seminar on one thing or another of almost anything by this point. Spent a better part of 2 years in Japan where I was coaching a karate team, studied some Aikido and oddly capoeira. And also here I spend my time with Kempo, a cane fighting system that I like a lot. And then when I get the chance and have the time, I do some BJJ and capoeira, mostly for the fitness aspects.
Okay. Right on. So now you're an author now, and when I met you, I don't think I knew you were an author, but or maybe you were. I can't remember. All I know is that maybe I didn't know you were as much or as big as an author as you are. But the one book that he's written, it's called, and I the book is actually in the other room. So if you have one close to you, but
yeah, I'll touch it real quick.
Yeah, it was. Oh shoot! I was there when nothing happened.
There I was.
Nothing happened.
When nothing happened.
Yeah, and it's this collection of stories from people in and out of, I guess, the violence industry. where a situation could have become violent, but wasn't, because they used their words or other different de-escalation techniques. And when it comes to martial arts, just like Jason and I were talking on his podcast earlier, that punching and kicking is not necessarily something that we're going to use all the time. We're going to use other techniques, de-escalation, all that kind of stuff. So his book, I got an advanced copy digitally so I could read it, and it's already gone on my list of highly suggested reads, because in the martial arts, it's like, it's one of those where it's like, it's important to know that you don't have to actually physically fight to save yourself or save somebody else from a situation,
Yeah.
So
the book was a really fun project. I've been a freelance writer and author since 2009 or so. This is my most recent book. And the project was interviewing 50 violence professionals, including folks like Rory Miller, who we both know. Tony Blauer was going to be in it, and then he had some scheduling issues at the last minute. Mark McYoung's in there. A lot of bouncers, bodyguards, military. We had a spy in there. One of the stories is from a Peace Corps volunteer who avoided being kidnapped by the local cartel. And all of these stories boil down to, it could have gotten violent. This is the thing I intentionally did, using skills and traits I had to not have it become violent. And I'm just, overall, more than anything else, I'm just really pleased with the level of people who just very willingly gave their time and stories to be a part of the project. I had a period while I was putting it together that was frustrating but really gratifying, where in the publishing industry, one of the things you do is you find somebody who's one weight class above you to write the introduction for the book. And it's a marketing thing, right? You get that person, their audience, et cetera, et cetera. So I went through about a month where I kept approaching people who were 1 or 2 weight classes above me, saying, "Hey, would you write the intro?" And they kept saying, "No, I want to be in the book. I want to tell my story." And that's how we got some of these really, very influential, very successful, very important people in the self-defense industry contributing their stories, because they all had and were more proud of these stories where they let someone off the hook or left the room early or used some clever trick. Like Tony Blauer's story that he told me that he wanted to use was, he was in New York City and he was in a camera shop and he was pointed to the camera he wanted, exposing the Rolex on his wrist.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy behind the counter said, "Hey man, nice watch," in exactly the wrong tone of voice with exactly the wrong body language.
Right.
It led him to think, okay, he's going to call his friend and I'm going to get mugged sometime in the next 3 blocks. And without batting an eye, he goes, "Oh, this thing, 2 blocks down, $50. Feel how heavy it is. Feel how real this feels. I cannot believe I've got this for $50.
Right.
Right? And it was like $120,000 Rolex Submariner.
Right.
But just little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a really fun project to be a part of, and I learned a lot, and I think the readers will as well.
Yeah, no, it's a really good book, and I like how it's kind of broken into different levels.
It's structured in, and there's a presentation I give that accompanies the book in various places where it starts with preparation, then awareness, then de-escalation, and then escape.
Yes.
And there's that continuum of, if you're at the de-escalation level or at the preparation level, you can be thinking about things and taking action weeks, months, years ahead of time.
Right.
Where when you're dealing with awareness, it's minutes, maybe hours. Then once you get to de-escalation, it's seconds to minutes, and escape, we're talking fractions of a second.
Right.
And so, the more you front load this work, the safer you're going to be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for being on.
Absolutely thrilled.
So, when you ask what you should prepare for this, I just talk about anything really. I know that you in the other one you're on the 2nd episode of season 2 for Picard, so we can't talk Picard.
we're
That's
wrapping
okay.
Discovery. We're in the 4th season of Discovery, which we love.
Right on.
Just love it. And my wife had a really interesting point of view about Star Trek, where apparently back when she was a teenager, her grandmother was like, "Why do you watch this silly thing? What is it about this?" And her point then was because it's an optimistic view of the future. It celebrates what's best about people.
Yes.
Rather than most science fiction, especially when you get dystopian, it really focuses on the worst. Even Star Wars, which is really great, is a very violent, gritty, dark, kind of yucky future
for kids.
Yeah. Whereas Star Trek, it really does. It leads by example and celebrates what we could be. And yeah, I really like that about it. Discovery did a very good job of that, especially in the second and third, the later seasons.
Yeah. When it comes to Discovery, I watched when they first put Discovery on the air, or I guess you could say stream. They aired national TV the first episode, and then everything after that had to be on
Paramount Plus,
or CBS All Access at the time.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, okay, great, new Star Trek, I'm game for it. I did not like the fact that it was going to be behind a paywall.
Yeah.
And that was all. I can't remember the guy who was in charge of CBS at the time, but it was Les something or other. But anyway, he didn't even like Star Trek. And because when he was actually behind getting rid of Enterprise originally, and when there were all these other ideas coming to light about, oh, hey, let's do a new Star Trek. He only did Star Trek to help the streaming service.
Huh.
And it's like, why are you using this? This franchise? I mean, I get it from a business standpoint. I totally get it. But as a fan, I was extremely opposed. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll watch the first episode. And I kind of like the idea that it was, it was going to be different, get away from the episodic stories, and we're going to have one long storyline. And it's like, okay, DS9 kind of did that a little bit towards the end.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay, I'll be open to it. But I watched that first episode.
Yeah.
And I was like, you watch like the first season of the Next Generation, and you're just like, oh my God, the acting is so horrible, and the outfits are cringy. And so when it came to that, it was like, okay, it's just the first episode. I'm not gonna judge them on their acting. But when it came to like technology continuity, when it came to like what the hell have they done with the Klingons, no matter how much, like I like what's her name, Shanina Austin Green, I cannot remember her full name, but anyway, the actress who plays Michael Burnham, I think she did a great job in Walking Dead, and so she's not a bad actress. I have just come to find that over the 4 seasons that Discovery has been on, even though the stories get a little bit better, especially after they get into the 32nd century, that I just don't like the Michael Burnham character. I just don't like her. And I know it kind of focuses around her. It's just one of those characters that it's almost like you must like her. I'm sorry, I don't. I
don't actively dislike her, but I watched that show for all the stuff going on with the ancillary characters. Like Saru's character arc is lovely.
Yeah, I think his character is actually my favorite character. Yeah. My favorite character from the beginning was Sully.
Yeah, Sully.
She was
Sully or Tilly.
Oh, Tilly. I don't know why that's
the redhead, a little heavy. Yeah,
she's character.
Yeah,
is the most in-depth character.
Yeah,
that they created from the beginning. And and when we're introduced to new characters, I know sometimes they're going to be a little bit flat, and then as the series goes on, no matter what series, it gets, you know, we get a little bit deeper and deeper and deeper, and we learn more. Like Saru, I was like, okay, it's just another alien character. But as they've developed his character, he's actually a pretty cool character. But Tilly from the beginning was interesting, and she had depth.
And she's
From
multifaceted.
the beginning. And it's one of those where it's like, why couldn't they? I mean, they did that with her. Why couldn't they have done that with the other characters?
Yeah.
You know? So I love her journey. I love her journey. So
You know, and I'll go watch. I'll watch bad Star Trek. I don't care. I watched Deep Space Nine on purpose.
And it's funny because there are people out there who are like, Deep Space Nine is the best Star Trek out there, and I'm like, I don't know.
They did something different.
Yeah.
And so if you really latched on to the different thing they did, I totally understand it. Like all the other Star Trek before that is the same Star Trek.
Right.
Different people, different ship, but that very, very similar vibe, very similar progression of the episodes and of the seasons. You know, everybody's in a spaceship going and having adventures. Deep Space Nine was different. And so if you embrace that difference, I totally get it. Now the people in my circle who hate Deep Space Nine hate it because it competed with and outperformed Babylon 5,
right?
Which is an objectively better show.
Which is a show that I saw like the first couple episodes, but it never clicked with me.
Oh yeah, the first season's rough. The thing about Babylon 5 is it was one of the very first shows that got network attention that did a long multi-season story arc.
Right.
So the payoff by the end of the show is very good. So you can look at it as a okay TV show that is made worth it by the quality of the story arc, or you can view it as having been tricked into watching 5 seasons of mediocre TV because you wanted to know how it turned out. And either of those is perfectly valid.
Yeah. I mean, like Rob, he says, I latched on to DS9 because it was different, but agree that Babylon 5 was much better.
Yeah.
Which I have a funny story. So I was at a Star Trek convention, and this is when creation conventions were, that it was the company that did stuff, and not the big cons, but like they brought like 1 or 2 actors to it, and it was just focused on them. So it was, and I can't remember the guy from Babylon 5. I can't remember who he was, who brought them, who that actor was, but it was Mark Leonard, who played Sarek in Star Trek, and this other guy from Babylon 5. And so of course I'm there for Mark Leonard, and I'm standing in line for the autograph, and that's when autographs were free. And so I'm standing in line for the autograph, and I'm standing, and everybody was like, you know, the line went in front of the Babylon 5 guy, and then Mark Leonard was on the end. So I'm just kind of standing there, and it was this awkward moment between me and this actor, who he's like, "Oh, do you have anything for me to sign?" And I was like, "I don't watch your show. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm really here for him." I said, "But you know what?" I said, "My buddy Tony, he loves your show." I said, "So how much for a photo?" And I'll, you know, like sign it to Tony. And so I think it was like $5 for an 8x10. And so, you know, he signs it Tony. And so it was one of those where it was started off awkward, but it's like, no, I'm going to get something for a friend of mine. Yeah. But it was just like, yeah, no, I'm not here for you. I'm here for him, you know?
Yeah.
But it was, and I don't know. It just never, for me, like my buddy Tony watched it. A couple other people watched Babylon 5, but it just never.
And the first season is really rough.
Yeah,
it's they plant some seeds that are important for the other seasons. Otherwise, you could just pick it up in season 2. But it's rough. It is.
Well, you know, I don't know if you knew this. I watched Star Trek for an entire year.
Oh, did you do the epic journey of Star Trek? And you just saw all the Star Trek up to that point?
Yeah. So what I did is I called it a year of Trek, and I actually started where I would watch a couple episodes and then I would podcast about it every day.
Oh,
about
wow.
the episodes I watched and some of the observations I made, all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of like that 55th anniversary. And I started on September 8th and I would end on September 7th, a year later. And just because of the school and my time and all that kind of stuff, I didn't end up podcasting every day, and there were some times where I fell behind because I went to a 4-day camp and I couldn't watch the Star Trek. So I'd get ahead and fall behind. But I watched all of Star Trek for the entire year. And also it was one of those where I didn't watch season 4 season 4 was being aired. I didn't watch any of season 4 because my wife she was still watching Discovery. So we hadn't watched season 4, but other stuff, like if it was new, you had to add that in. So like you had like Strange New Worlds that was on top of whatever was scheduled. Lower Decks that was on top of whatever.
Was scheduled. So if it happened to air or drop that day, you had to jump in there too. All right.
Yeah, and so I would do like a regular stream for what I was watching, and I would do a separate stream for whatever was new. So I wouldn't have, if you didn't want like Picard spoilers or whatever, then it was you could, you wouldn't not watch. You'd just be like, okay, I'll watch this later. And so going through, I enjoyed Deep Space Nine. This is kind of where this gets back to the Deep Space Nine thing. I enjoyed Deep Space Nine when it came out. I was in the camp at the time when it came out that Rick Berman was ruining Star Trek. And but it wasn't like so bad that I just wouldn't watch it. It was just one of those like, I'll just I'm just kind of standoffish, but I'll go through the episode. And for me, of course it got better. And I've watched Deep Space Nine since then, of course. But really, in my year of Trek, when I rewatched it, I was like, there are some episodes that are amazing. They go on the top 10 of some of the best Star Trek episodes ever produced. But as a whole, I really didn't enjoy watching it this time around. And I couldn't really pinpoint why. It was just one of those where it's just like, yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. I mean, I enjoyed the episodes that are really, really good, but beyond that, it just didn't, So it was interesting how it, my experience that way. Enterprise, still it is. I'm a next generation, or I'm a original generation guy. So the original generation is always the top for me. But for me, Enterprise comes next. And I know it gets a lot of crap. And I know that there's some story, like some of the writing wasn't that great, but I think it's
early on when you had the episode of the Vulcan in the bikini, like rubbing lotion on herself. And they got rid of that pretty quick because they were taking somebody's advice and realized that's not what this fandom's about.
Yeah.
But it was really weird, but I also really enjoyed it. Especially the season that was basically Star Blazers. I don't know if you remember that cartoon from when we were kids.
Yeah,
but yeah, with it when I think it's the Xindi, that whole season, that it was Star Blazers done in Star Trek, and that was fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that they did that I didn't like. Of course, ending after season 4, killing Trip. I think that was just like the death of Trip is as meaningless as the death of Kirk in Generations. Okay, kill him, but kill him have a proper death. So
the ultimate expression of that sin in storytelling, of course, is the joke about what what do Reavers do with their dirty clothes after a raid? Or what do Reavers do with their spears when they get dirty? They put them through their wash.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the murderers.
Oh, that's a good joke. I like that.
Right. You know, because Wash's death is like absolutely random. I mean, it was a cool moment, but son of a bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think would be kind of fun if I ever had this much time and interest would be to, and I'll bet you there's a list on the internet somewhere, watch all the Star Trek episodes in chronological order, not order of release.
Right. So I and actually, do I have?
Oh, I bet you have that list somewhere, don't you?
Okay. So somewhere, and I don't know, it's not. Okay. All right. So I put this together.
Okay.
All right. So it was, and it's got let's see, we'll go to here. So it's got the episode name, the date you watch it, a little checkbox, the original date that it aired, and what episode. Okay. So this was basically like the order it came out. So like we started with the Cage, and then the original generation, and then the next generation. And even though the next generation and DS9 overlapped a little bit, it was based on the series coming out. So you have the series Next Generation, and then DS9. And even though Voyager and DS9 overlapped, you had Voyager after that. I'm working on an updated one. So where you could choose how to watch it. So my formula was let's see, there were like 700 and some odd episodes and 13 movies. And then you, if you break that down, you basically had to watch 15 episodes. And if you count a movie as an episode, you had to watch roughly 15 episodes a week. So it was 2 episodes a day. And then Saturday, I think Saturday was our 3-episode day. The other rule is if you had a part 1 and part 2, those had to be watched together. So you had to watch it on the same day. So Menagerie had to be on the same day. If the part 1 and part 2 ended up being split by days, then that day would end up being a 3-episode day.
Okay.
So as we add more Star Trek, I'm basically coming up with another theory. It's like, okay, you can watch this. So I'm going to have different options in the newer version, which I'm slowly working on. In the newer version, there's going to be how different ways you can watch. You can watch it in series order. I was thinking you could watch it in a Stardate order.
Yeah.
But when it comes to what is it called? When it comes to Strange New Worlds, they truly take on how Gene originally designed the Stardates.
Yeah.
So the Stardate doesn't start with a bigger number at the first episode or one number at the first episode and then a bigger number on the 10th episode. It literally bounces around. Like you have 173.5, and then the next episode is 2671.3, and then the next episode is 1543.3. So it really bounces back and forth. And so I'm like, okay, you can't really do that because the story, even though it's episodic, it is told like episode 1. You can't watch episode 3 and then episode 1 because there's stuff in episode 3 that you would have seen in episode 1 to get the whole story, So timeline wise, you could like Next Generation for the most part, Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, they're really the ones that truly stuck to that chronological order. You could really watch it in that. But when it comes to the original generation, Deep Space Nine or Strange New Worlds, you're really going to have stuff bounce around.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm going to come up with a guide, or I'm going to update the guide so you can watch it in series order or somewhat in chronological order, based on Stardate, because it gets really interesting towards the end of DS9, the last couple seasons of DS9, and the last couple seasons or the first couple seasons of Voyager, because like one day you might watch a Voyager episode and the next day you're watching a DS9 episode, and then, you know, so on and so forth. So
yeah, or, you know, if you did it just right, you could end up watching The Trouble with Tribbles, and then the next one is the DS9 episode where they accidentally go back in time. Trouble with Tribbles.
Right. Yeah. So it's one of those where it's like, okay, how, you know, giving options of how different ways you could watch this. So
yeah, it's funny how many martial artists are deeply nerdy.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so we've had a bunch of different people post stuff. So
cool.
If we go through, let's see, going all the way back, let's see. Bill says, it took me meeting Mish before it sank in and made me a better bouncer. Then we start getting into Star Trek. Saru and Tilly are the reasons to watch Discovery.
Yep, absolutely agree.
Rob, again, I think a lot of Saru's appeal is thanks to the great job of Doug Jones. Yeah, that the actor sometimes makes the character totally.
Yeah.
Also, I latched on to DS9 because it was different. Oh, we already posted that one.
Yeah.
Babylon 5, like Farscape, was ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And I watched Farscape, but not when it came out. I watched it after the fact, and I thought it was really, really good.
Yeah.
Let's see. So Morgan Garrett, he's actually going to be, which episode is the one where Cylons are using the Force to melt the So Morgan is actually going to be at the school on the 18th, dressed up as a Sith Lord. I don't know the name he has for a Sith Lord, but he's going to be teaching lightsaber stuff for
cool.
a parent out.
Start doing. Yeah. Cool.
Because he used to be one of the chief instructors down at Saberforge.
Okay.
So, and then of course Rob says Morgan, that's in the Dr. Spock holiday special. Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just for me, like Star Trek has been a huge part of my life. And I honestly don't remember what got me into it. It is just one of those things that, and sci-fi in general has always just been one of those things that I remember. I can't remember how old I was. Let's see. It came out in 1978. So I was probably 6 or 7 when I was watching it. But I went through a period of time where I wanted people to call me Starbuck because of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, so I remember my dad got me into Star Trek and science fiction in general. I mean, whenever people are being read, Fox and the Hare, whatever, he's reading me Foundation. And then I remember when I was about 5 or 6, we lived in a house about halfway between Eugene and Salem. And this was in the 70s when every city had their own little local TV station.
Right.
And the Salem one aired Star Trek on Sunday an hour later, the rerun, right? Reruns of Star Trek an hour later than the Eugene one.
Okay.
And so he would watch, or maybe it was the other way around. I don't remember. So he'd watch the one, then get up on the roof and turn the antenna around so we could watch Star Trek again.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really came into Star Trek when I was a freshman because I met other people who really like Star Trek too. So I think that's really kind of where it's where Star Trek solidified for me. But I'm one of those where I'll be watching a TV show and have seen like I'll see an actor playing a different thing and I'll relate it back to Star Trek.
Yeah.
Well,
a shocking number of people have been in Star Trek.
Hey, Jim.
Iggy Pop was in DS9 for crying out, and The Rock was in an early episode of Next Generation. So a lot of people, it's almost like a Law and Order. A lot of people have cycled through Star Trek over the years.
Yeah. No, The Rock was in a Voyager episode.
Oh, yeah.
And he fought 7 of 9.
Yeah, in like a gladiatorial thing.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's one of those things. And like, finally, being 50 and always wanting a tattoo, I finally got a tattoo. Yeah. So yeah. But, and of course it's the Enterprise. My favorite Enterprise, though, is the movie series or the movie version. That's absolutely my favorite ship design. But you can't get more classic than the original.
Yeah.
And it was so funny. So like this week, I did that focus read at the school, and I had told people that I was doing it, and so it's funny because we're talking about focus, and I'm reading this book on focus. And the kids are totally like, there were a couple kids like, what's that on your arm? And I'm like, okay, well, we're focusing on the book right now. I said, I will talk about what's on my arm after we're done with the book. But it was funny. My daughter goes with me and somebody's like, oh, one of the kids was like, what is that? I said, well, that's, I was like, well, this is the Starship Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
And Alexa's like, you should have just said it's a spaceship, and I'm like, no, it is a spaceship. I said, but in actuality, it is a starship, and it is the Starship Enterprise.
If somebody points to President Biden and it says, who is that? Are you going to say that's some dude?
No, you're got to be specific, and especially for kids.
Yeah,
because and it's so funny. So I had this one parent call me, and he was asking me all about how do I run my classes, and he's very unimpressed with the school system. So they homeschool, and he wants his kid to do martial arts. So, but he doesn't want to take it to any martial arts school that's going to like, push anything on his kid. Like, cause he was very straight up. He says, you don't put like he says, you're not going to put a pride flag up or any political signs up, or, saying, either one, like even a tread on me sign. And I said, no, I said, I run a martial arts school. I said, I used to actually have an American flag up, but I don't, just because it doesn't fit the new aesthetic. I said, really the only thing I might push on your kid is Star Trek, because, and he goes, okay, well, that's not a bad thing.
Well, do you remember that kerfluffle when I think it was the first season of Strange New Worlds came out, or maybe it was the second season of Picard, where Stacey Abrams was a guest star, and then a bunch of people were like, "How dare Star Trek be political?" And like, yeah, tell me you've never watched Star Trek without using the words "I've never watched Star Trek." Right?
Well, it's okay. So, Stacey Abrams, she ends up being the president of the United States in Discovery.
In Discovery.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And it was so funny because she shows up.
Yeah.
Rob said, since I'm usually the one talking and Rob is usually the one listening, Rob is the one that usually gets on the phone or the computer to do, if he doesn't know it in his head, he's doing a search. So Rob is always good for that. Yeah. I had heard that, and I was like, okay, well, It is. I rolled my eyes, and
Yeah.
I rolled my eyes at the fact that she was on there, but I still rolled my eyes at the fact of the outrage.
Yeah.
And it's just like, so what?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like you can totally read into that some type of wokeness or some type of political stuff. But I'm sorry, if anybody has ever read any or watched anything Star Trek, Star Trek is woke.
Yeah.
Okay.
From the beginning.
The one thing I like though, and the one thing I've always liked about Star Trek and its wokeness, it's not one of those, it is a way to tell a story with a moral.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they don't hit you in the head with it.
And they really touched on some,
Yeah.
I mean, like even like that's what Gene was. I mean, that was Gene. He wanted to push that threshold all the time.
Yeah.
What I don't like about some of the ways that the stories have been written for Discovery is that it's still written with, okay, here's a moral, or here's this something that we want to some type of I can't even think of the word, but anyway, this is something that we want to bring to light, or this is a topic we want to talk about. It's one of those where I'm going to grab you by the throat and we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it, where it's just like where it didn't need to be.
Yeah. Or the best Star Trek was, for example, in the original, where in the height of the Cold War, they had a Russian on the bridge. But there was never a conversation about the Russian on the bridge. It was just there. And everybody acted like it was no big deal. Very much like in Discovery, you have the front row romance in that is between a gay couple.
Right.
And there's never a point anybody makes a big deal out of it. It's just, oh, they're a couple. They're not a gay couple, they're not a straight couple, they're a couple, which is how it should be. Right. And I applaud them because we're still grappling with that in our society, just like with Chekhov's presence on the bridge. They're being a bit woke there, but they're also just presenting it as fait accompli. This is how it is. This is how an enlightened, civilized society treats this. And we're not even going to mention it because at that point, our society won't need to mention it. It's just there.
I absolutely agree. There was one scene. God, I cannot remember her name. She is, or they are, if you want to be political about it. She's the human that
the one that wasn't the Trill, got the symbiont. Yeah.
Yes, she has the symbiont. And there was the episode, it was after her awakening and she kind of knows what's going on. They have this whole talk about pronouns, them versus they, and or she versus them or whatever. And she's like, I want to be, if you could refer to me as they, because I've never, she goes into this whole diatribe of, I've never felt one way or the other. And I knew I knew what they were trying to do, but the way that they presented it again was, let me grab you by the throat and push this down your throat.
Ham-fisted, but I appreciated that scene just because
and I think it's one of the things that needed to be in there, but I think they could have, I think if they had written it just a little bit differently.
Yeah, it could have been a shorter conversation. For instance, it could have been simply they and okay, and then moving on.
Well, even if they were going to give explanation, Rob and I were talking about this. I think I was rewatching the show, and I was like, I think I realized why I didn't like that scene. And basically, for me, it's like she is she's a human that has a symbiont, and she's really identifying that I am one person, but I am also two different creatures. So they could have played the same old she versus they, but as in, since my experience in the pool on Trill, and then I'm actually not just me, I am many people, I'd really prefer to be called they or them, or, or however they were going to present it. And it would have gotten across the exact same message, just written a little bit differently instead, and it wouldn't have felt forced. I think for me, even though yes, the conversation I think is a good one to have, the way they wrote it was forced, and it didn't have to be forced.
It didn't land as well as it could have. I thought the conversation was important.
Yeah.
I kind of thought the Trill thing and the many personalities in the same body was what they were trying to engage around. I thought if you looked at it through that eyes, to me it'd be a little chicken shit, right? Yeah. Where it's, we're going to take this metaphor and this thing that lets people who are uncomfortable with the conversation have an out. Where if it had been just about gender identity, then they would have been hitting the social thing on the head the way that Star Trek does in its finest moments.
Yeah.
But instead, they kind of gave people an out, kind of gave themselves an out in case it tested poorly. And there's a part of me that was like, if you're going to do this, guys, do it.
Right.
This is Star Trek after all. Star Trek has a history of having balls and just doing it. You know, first interracial kiss on television. Right there.
Absolutely.
Right. You know?
And it's so funny because they're saying, like, people have come out and been like, oh, well, that wasn't the first interracial kiss, because in Mirror Mirror, the actress that played Kirk's love interest in the Mirror universe, she's actually Filipino or whatever.
Or
it's like, but she wasn't playing a Filipino. She was playing a white girl.
Yeah. Or you can make the argument for Lucy and Desi. But in that time, an interracial kiss between an African American person and a Caucasian person had much more impact than between.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely,
you can make the argument, but you're really, you know, you're pushing your glasses up and missing the point.
Right.
Yeah.
Rob, the couple in Discovery is written so well. They are written as a guy couple or as two stereotypical gay men. They are two individuals in a relationship that happen to be men.
Exactly. They're not a gay couple. They're And it is Star Trek doing their politics the way that great Star Trek has always done.
Yeah.
And anybody who's going to stomp their foot and say, Star Trek shouldn't be woke, has clearly either not been watching Star Trek or is watching it while very, very drunk.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I am kind of looking forward to season 5 to kind of see where they take it. Of Discovery. I am more so looking to season 2 of Strange New Worlds.
Yeah.
So the one thing for me about Star Trek is continuity. And that's like when we saw the Klingons and how different they were. It's like, why, like, they already explained why they were human looking in Enterprise. So why aren't they human looking? You know, why do they have, and it's like, and of course there was this outrage. And so in season 2, now they have hair, but it's like, but why aren't they human looking? During that time frame, they are human looking.
Yeah.
You know? So
there's a stand-up comic and singer-songwriter named Mikey Mason, who's all of his material is geek cultured. He has a whole album called Impotent Nerd Rage. Yeah. That's exactly what's going on here. And to me, it's like, I just kind of let it slide on that because we've got coming on to 10 series, 14 movies, 6 decades. How many showrunners, how many people have owned the licensing, how many people have been in the writer's room. It is unreasonable for me to expect strong continuity given what they're working with. So okay, guys, I'm able to kind of just wrench that out of my enjoyment of the show, but I totally understand why some people would just bug the crap out of them.
Yeah. Like for me, I put it in, and I heard the term recently, beta canon, like when it comes to like books, but I've always kind of looked at, how I consider canon. Canon is TV shows first. And so as a TV show, if they're contradicting themselves, and, you know, yes, Star Trek has contradicted themselves from episode to episode, but this was like a blatant, at least from my perspective, it was one of those blatant, like, have you not seen all of Star Trek? Like Like, let's get with the program here.
And for me, a lot of why? What part of what happened in that season would not have been just as satisfying if they looked like Klingons already looked?
Yeah.
I like,
And even if they were different, even
Yeah.
if they still kept the same thing, having, well, maybe they were genetically just different enough that they did not change.
Yeah.
And you still had the primary Klingons who did change. And so maybe they're like, no, we didn't change. We didn't get that virus. So we're the ones, we're going to start taking back over. And there could have been that total clash, and you would have, and I think it still probably would have worked a little bit, but
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah. So, and then of course the technology and it's like, you know, why did they have genetic, you know, but like not genetic, but like the holographic video, which technology wise, by the 23rd century, they should probably have something like that.
Yeah.
But why are they showing that 10 years prior to what is Enterprise? So of course, I know with all the outrage, they did start to, you know, with season 2, they totally retcon themselves. It was like, okay, we're going to have, you know, let's go Battlestar Galactica. We're going to have no interconnected, no network computers. We're going to have this. You know, so, you know, it's like the history of Discovery should be taken out of all Starfleet records. So there's no talk about them. And, so, you know, they covered themselves, and it was an okay cover, but I don't know. I just thought that was funny. I think it did get better for me though. Now they're in the future.
Yeah.
You have to worry about the retconning. You know,
it was a smart storytelling move.
Yeah.
That is the thing that just a little sour note for a lot of Discovery was this ship is clearly far more advanced than the original series Enterprise.
Yeah.
And yes, sure, it's a secret experimental ship, but still. Although I thought they did a very good job in Strange New Worlds of having the Enterprise. It's clearly been slicked up and looks more modern than the Enterprise that we got used to, but it still feels like the Enterprise on that deck, even though it's all chromey with lens flares.
Right.
You know,
I think they tried to, because I think, all right, Jim, thank you for hanging out as long as you could.
Oh yeah, I'm going to have to bail in a couple minutes too. I've got a lesson with my teacher at 11.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, all right. Well, then we can, we could just wrap it up too, because it's getting to that time.
Well, I'll need to share my current fan theory about Strange New Worlds. Okay. So people have made again on the you know, the politicized woke Star Trek, which is a thing I approve of. Captain Pike's deck is full of powerful women, which is great, right? Like an area man to be seen. You know, we haven't seen an episode where Captain Kirk shows up yet. Like you know, James T. Kirk shows up. We've got his cousin or whatever that guy is. Right. I am of the theory that having spent his formative years in Starfleet on a bridge full of these incredibly powerful, cool women, that's why Kirk in the original series is such a horn dog. Oh. He's come to love women.
Interesting. Okay.
I can make a part of the show, but that's just my own personal headcanon.
So in Menagerie, Kirk does say that he had met Pike just before he took over the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Oh, and Rob digs that theory. But I know that that same actor is going to be playing Kirk in season 2.
Yeah,
because we did get to see him for that really, really awesome episode, but that was kind of an alternate timeline. So we have we know we're going to see him, but how much of him are we going to see?
And that will be the question, whether he came up on the Enterprise or was piped on as Pike got piped off, and we'll find out.
Right. Yeah.
But, yeah. So, anyway, that's my headcanon until I have contradictory information.
Okay. No, I think we can play with that. We can totally play with that.
All right.
All right. Well, Jason, it's been a great show today. Thank you
Absolutely, my
for
pleasure.
coming on and being nerdy with me
Mhm.
and everybody else. So, all right. So until next time, I will be back on Friday. My tea is gone, so the show is over because that's part of the rule. I drink until my tea is gone.
Excellent.
But yeah, Jason, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mitch. We'll
And
see you at the next lab, and we'll talk soon.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you very
Everyone,
much.
thank you. Live long and prosper and be safe.